Hello, my name is Michelle Herzog. I'm the History Social Science Consultant here at the Los Angeles County Office of Education and the Director of the California Democracy School Civic Learning Initiative. I want to welcome you to Module 2 of this professional development series designed to provide educators with the knowledge, skills, and resources to implement high-quality civic learning in classrooms to prepare all students for college, career, and civic life in the 21st century. The entire professional development series can be found at our website, www.lacoe.edu/California Democracy School. Now, this particular Module 2 will provide you with an overview of the California Democracy School Civic Learning Initiative, which is funded by the S.D. Bechtel Jr. Foundation and directed by the Los Angeles County Office of Education in partnership with the Los Angeles County Education Foundation. We're going to explain how our initiative works in this module and also describe what we mean by high-quality civic learning and the elements of a civic inquiry and investigation. With me today is Ryan Stow, the civic learning coach of our California Democracy School Initiative. Ryan plays a vital role in the program by providing on-the-ground coaching and technical assistance to teachers in our 12 schools. He also facilitates monthly professional learning community meetings held at each of the schools. Thank you, Ryan, for your ongoing commitment, your hard work, and of course for being with us today.
Thank you, Michelle. It's a great program and I'm proud to be part of it.
In this broadcast, Ryan and I will be providing you with an overview of the California Democracy School Initiative, what it is, what we hope to accomplish, and how we define high-quality civic learning in the program. In Module 1, we talked about the importance of civic learning for all students to preserve and strengthen our American democracy. We also learned about the urgency to address the lack of attention it receives in most schools across America. And we know there's a lot of excellent models out there and fabulous teachers doing fabulous things with students. They're learning how the history of our nation was formed and the type of government that was established. They're learning how democracy worked in the past and how it's working today. They're developing skills and attitudes to help their students become informed, engaged citizens by addressing real-world problems in their communities, discussing controversial issues, and taking action to make a real difference in the world. But unfortunately, these teachers, champions of civic learning, are the exception and not the norm. Civic learning workshops and institutes are usually attended by teachers from a number of schools across a region. Students that are lucky enough to get in those classrooms are the fortunate ones. But students in classrooms where teachers don't attend, unfortunately, are not. Well, the California Democracy School Initiative, funded by the S.D. Bechtel Foundation, was established with the goal of institutionalizing civic learning across 12 schools in Los Angeles County and Orange County so that every student at these schools, not just a few, but all, will participate in high-quality civic inquiry and investigation at least once in their high school career. And because we know that all schools are different and have different cultures and characteristics, we allowed each of the schools to individually decide where to integrate the civic learning experience. And as you'll learn later in this module, some schools placed it in required freshman orientation classes, some embedded into history classes, others place it in English classes. So take a minute and look at the list of schools involved in this initiative. Now, as you can see, we have quite a cross-section of schools representing a variety of socioeconomic backgrounds, demographics, sizes, and geographic locations. Each of these 12 schools were chosen through an application process and were required to have support in the form of a sign-off by the school principal, district superintendent, school board president, a parent representative, and teacher leaders at each of their schools. We approached the project as a focus on systems change that would require schools to focus on 3 areas: the civic competencies of the students, the school environment, and the educational support systems that need to be in place. we created a planning guide to help school teams drill down on these 3 areas. So we're going to start and listen to Ryan talk a little bit about the first piece, the student civic competencies.
In looking at the student civic competencies, we want schools to help students understand and embrace the knowledge, skills, and dispositions they need to become informed, responsible, and actively engaged citizens. Download a copy of the planning guide and look at the first section to examine the indicators for the civic knowledge, skills, and dispositions we want for all students.
Let's look at the second area, the school environment. Because we're asking schools to institutionalize civic learning across an entire grade span, we need to think critically about the curriculum and instruction that needs to be either developed or adopted. We need to think about how it will be assessed through formative and summative classroom measures. We need to think of the learning environment in these classes. Are they conducive to collaborative work and dialogue? And finally, what professional development can we provide to train teachers, and where can they go to continue their training to help new teachers to the program once the initiative sunsets? Take a moment now to examine these areas in your planning guide. Reflect and talk with your colleagues about these 4 areas that need to be in place to institutionalize civic learning: curriculum and instruction, assessment, the learning environment, and professional development.
And finally, let's look at the educational support systems that need to be in place: leadership, policy, and partnerships. These are areas that are often overlooked but are vitally important if you want to truly adopt an initiative across the school. Again, take a moment to examine the planning guide to examine the indicators for educational leadership, policy, and partnerships. Let's take a moment to look at this brief video that provides an overview of the California Democracy School Initiative.
What I love the most about civic education and civic learning, it gives purpose to what we do. We are here as teachers to not just prepare kids for college and career, but to prepare them for civic life. Social studies as a whole has been largely marginalized across the nation, and particularly in California. And in California, when you drill down on that, one area I think that's been neglected more than any other of the social studies is civic learning. What it's been weak on is really promoting and strengthening those participatory skills that students really need to take that knowledge and apply it in the real world. We're very excited about the California Democracy School Initiative because it's a unique opportunity to really institutionalize civic learning in our schools. The Summer Institute was the beginning of a 3-year effort to start to build these skills. We have 12 high school teams coming together to first of all go deep and understand, practice the civic knowledge, skills, and dispositions they want for their students. In year 2, they're going to come back and institutionalize it across their entire school.
Our school joined Democracy School Initiative with the hope of us promoting collaboration, critical thinking, and communication.
This initiative is different from others because it's multidisciplinary. I'm sitting with my math teacher, I'm sitting with my science teacher, I'm sitting with my special ed reading teacher, and we are all as a community planning what it means to develop civic literacy in our classroom.
In this initiative, every single student from our school will be going through a democracy program where they will learn how to investigate, how to ask questions, and how to problem solve.
What I love most about civic classes would be the fact that you are out there, outside of school, talking to the teachers, talking to the students, more involved.
We were able to learn about change and how we can help better our community.
It's an attempt to really institutionalize and systemize high-quality civic learning for all students in schools. You have an environment that's rich in dialogue, educated, informed citizens, and actions that are thoughtful and benefit all members of our American democracy.
Take a moment to reflect on what you saw. What did you see that was similar to other initiatives you have seen? And when it comes to civic learning, what makes this approach so different?
So you may be wondering how in the world to get schools to establish instructional practices that will reach our goal. Well, the answer is it takes commitment, resources, and a lot of time. This type of work takes time, and our program has evolved over 3 years. In year 1, we provided teams from each of the 12 schools with high-quality professional development. They learned about the importance of civic learning. They learned about the 6 proven practices outlined in the Guardian of Democracy, and they adopted the pedagogy for designing and developing a high-quality civic learning experience for their students. We provided coaching and technical support thanks to Ryan. The teams met each month and operated as professional learning communities, and, most important, they had the support of administrators.
In year 1, they had time to practice the techniques, reflect, revise, and improve their delivery. In year 2, they began to figure out where to integrate civic learning into their school plans. As you will later see, some schools decided to integrate it into freshman orientation classes, some across 10th grade history classes, some in 11th grade English classes. It really didn't matter to us where they placed it as long as every student at their school would have at least one experience with a civic inquiry and investigation. We offered more professional development to train additional teachers. We continued to provide on-the-ground coaching and technical assistance, and teams continued to operate as professional learning communities to reflect, share, and revise their work. We even offered mini-grants to allow schools to purchase resources, curriculum, materials, or cover substitute costs to deepen and refine their work. At the end of year 2, each school showcased their great work at a huge California Democracy School showcase event at the Richard Nixon Presidential Library in Yorba Linda, California.
Year 3 was dedicated to finalizing their programs and cementing their programs through school or district policies that would sustain the work beyond the cycle of the grant. Some adopted school policies, some adopted district-wide policies, or had their boards approve new curriculums. A big lift. We have all seen how great programming can quickly disappear when the champions leave schools. We wanted to be sure that all the hard work toward institutionalizing civic learning for all their students would remain intact for the years to come. Now, before we get into too many more details about the program, we'd like to describe what a high-quality civic inquiry and investigation is and what it looks like. For the purposes of the California Democracy School Initiative, a high-quality civic learning inquiry and investigation includes these 5 components. It begins with an inquiry that frames a public problem or issue. It leads to research and investigation by students, an opportunity for them to engage in civil dialogue and reach conclusions, and finally, avenues to communicate conclusions and take informed action. Now, we don't claim to be the original model for this type of work. As we discuss it further, you will certainly notice similarities to many other outstanding civic learning programs. And just to remind you, we've created other professional development modules that explain each of these components to go deep and give you a visual and understanding of what they are. We're also going to show you footage of the classroom space and what it looks like in the classroom when each of these elements are put into place. Ryan's going to lead us into the first discussion about inquiry.
A high-quality civic inquiry is clear, specific, authentic, and manageable. Addresses a problem that is authentic and relevant to students, actively engages students in the development stage, develops creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking skills, will develop cognitive and participatory skills of students to result in students taking informed civic action in the form of policy or direct service. The question that often arises is, should teachers establish the inquiry or should students? The answer to that varies, of course, on the grade level, subject, and setting of each classroom. Younger students may need more guidance than older students, and because we know teachers are charged with meeting content standards and objectives, they will often guide students to develop an inquiry that will help address their academic goals. But we want to be sure that students will have a voice in selecting issues that are relevant and important to them.
The second phase is the investigation phase. So once an inquiry is established, we want students to conduct an investigation that will compel them to delve into content areas to apply disciplinary knowledge and concepts. We want the investigation to focus on a variety of perspectives or points of view from both traditional and non-traditional sources, including centers of power and influence. The investigation should compel students to seek out evidence from multiple sources. It should engage all students in opportunities to evaluate sources, analyze information, and make conclusions. The investigation is intentionally targeted to respond to the inquiry question and does not digress from the topic. It should intentionally develop creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking skills. And it should require the use of technology or digital media. Students can gather that type of information from the internet, databases, by conducting their own surveys or interviewing and even engaging in community mapping activities.
It is really important to provide students opportunities to engage in dialogue about controversial issues. As we know from the Guardian of Democracy, it is one of the 6 proven practices that leads to effective civic life. And providing safe places for students to practice this skill is vitally important for them and for the future of our democracy. Exemplary civil dialogue includes values all viewpoints, is civil and respectful at all times, reflects a great deal of preparation in advance from the facilitator and participants, demonstrates much use of academic language, relies heavily on evidence from research and multiple sources, is led by a facilitator but primarily delivered by participants, allows adequate time to explore a particular idea before moving on to another point, is intentionally designed to make all participants feel comfortable, prompts questions that are authentic and refer back to previous points made in the discussion, is monitored and owned by the entire group. Often this is easier said than done, and many teachers, school administrators, and families get a bit nervous when students engage in controversial or sensitive topics, which is why it takes a skilled teacher to effectively facilitate a dialogue that is civil, respectful, and informative. Take a moment to think about what that might look like in a classroom. Do you know any effective techniques or strategies to lead a civil dialogue? We have found a few great models, including Socratic seminar, philosophical chairs, structured academic controversy. We recommend you engage in the modules we have created that feature these models to see what they look like in a classroom and learn how to conduct them in your classroom.
Now we move into communicating conclusions. So once students have investigated an issue, analyzed the information, listened to different viewpoints, we want them to reach a conclusion and be able to communicate that conclusion. Is it possible for different students to come up with different conclusions? Of course. But we want to emphasize to students that whatever conclusion they make, it is supported by evidence, and that evidence must be communicated as well. Where have you heard that before?
Once conclusions are made, now comes the exciting part, the time when students can actually apply what they have learned by taking informed action. This is where they practice their civic skills to impact policies that will solve real problems. Taking informed action applies democratic procedures to address the issue in a strategic manner to a variety of audiences, utilizes a variety of tools in innovative forms to promote action, for example, multimedia presentations, petitions that are online, includes dedicated time for students to reflect on the process and outcomes. And this can be done in a variety of ways. Use social media to circulate a message, write a letter to an official, create a petition, create a leaflet and distribute that to the public, start a service organization in the community, create an idea for legislation and present it to a policymaker. We've created a civic inquiry investigation rubric to guide you in understanding each of these components more carefully. Take a moment to download the rubric and examine it with your colleagues.
So, as you probably noticed by now, this approach to civic learning is not original, and many of the strategies and techniques will sound very familiar to you. We think of it as a confluence of several initiatives being adopted by schools and school districts across California and across the nation.
The Common Core State Standards for English and Language Arts that has been adopted by California and most other states calls for students to engage in complex text, extract and employ evidence, and build knowledge. Surely you saw that in the brief description we provided for civic inquiry and investigation.
So as you heard, you can see how it connects to the Common Core State Standards. It also connects to the Partnership for 21st Century Skills, now known as the Partnership for 21st Century Learning, which is driven largely by the business community that is expressing the need for young people to develop those 4 C's to be successful in their future careers: critical thinking and problem solving, communication skills, collaboration skills, creativity and innovation. Surely you see those elements in this civic inquiry and investigative approach.
The Guardian of Democracy outlines the 6 proven practices that together can provide students with the knowledge, skills, and dispositions to be informed and actively engaged citizens. Number 1, classroom instruction in government, history, law, and democracy. 2, discussion of controversial issues. 3, service learning linked to formal curriculum and classroom instruction. 4, extracurricular activities. 5, student voice in school governance. 6, student simulations of democratic processes and procedures. You can learn more about these in our discussion with Ted McConnell, the Executive Director of the Campaign for the Civic Mission of Schools, in our first module.
And then, of course, you will likely see the connections to the College, Career, and Civic Life C3 framework for Social Studies State Standards. This was a 3-year collaborative effort that included a number of national organizations representing the many disciplines of the social studies. The C3 framework was published by the National Council for the Social Studies in 2013 and has been adopted by a number of state departments of education and local schools and school districts. The C3 framework really had a great deal of influence on how we defined and designed our civic inquiry and investigative processes, as you can see. The C3 is an inquiry-based approach to social studies that clearly provides students with the content and skills to become responsible, engaged citizens. It begins with Dimension 1, which asks teachers to begin each social studies lesson with a compelling question. A question that is intellectually meaty, relevant, and interesting to students and will compel them to investigate a myriad of answers and solutions. Hopefully you saw that in our civic inquiry examples. Dimension 2 of the C3 framework calls for students to dig into the content of history, civics, economics, and geography to search for answers. Any complex issue, past or present, should spark the need to examine political implications, historical themes and events, economic impacts, and the influence of geography on decision and events that occur. Dimension 3 of the C3 should also be familiar to most social studies teachers. It emphasizes the needs for students to gather and evaluate a variety of sources, analyze them, and develop claims based on the evidence discovered. We want students to be able to communicate and critique their conclusions in a variety of ways: speaking, writing, using media. And finally, and probably most importantly, we want students to apply what they've learned to events and circumstances in the real world today. For civics, that means taking informed action. Historical issues such as migration, immigration, civil rights, political conflicts, economic and environmental disasters all have direct and similarly very complex issues surrounding them today, just as they did in the past. What do we learn from studying these events and issues of the past? How can they inform the decisions we make in today's world? We see that in the C3, and it is very present in our civic inquiry and investigative approach of the Democracy School Project.
So that is a quick overview of our California Democracy School Civic Learning Initiative and how we define high-quality civic learning. We are grateful to the S.D. Bechtel Jr. Foundation for their financial support, to the Los Angeles County Education Foundation, and the Los Angeles County Office of Education for their trust in us for implementing this audacious plan, And finally, we are extremely grateful to the school administrators, board members, teachers, parents, and community members who have worked very hard to make this dream a reality.
You can learn more about this initiative by going to our California Democracy School website and watching the other professional development modules we've produced. They are all intentionally designed to provide educators with the information, training, and tools to replicate this initiative in their own schools. So I want to thank Ryan for joining me in this important work and for being with us today, for helping us along.
Thank you, Michelle. It's been a pleasure to be part of this process.
I agree. It's been a great program for sure. And I also want to thank our wonderful tech crew here at LACOE, led by Tyler Cook and our director, Jeff Reyna, and the wonderful team. We just couldn't do this terrific project without them. And of course, I have to thank our own Division of Curriculum and Instructional Services, led by Yvonne Contreras here at the Los Angeles County Office of Education. Our good friends at LACEF have been wonderful support too. Michelle Biagioni, Sheila Lewis, just a terrific team. Ryan and I would like to close with this brief interlude of photos from the 2015 California Democracy School Initiative. As you watch, I want you to look at the faces, the enthusiasm, the diversity of schools that are all moving forward to prepare the next generation of citizens to be fully engaged in our American democracy.